Crosbie and Cross on 95.7 Cruise FM.
Our Crosbie and Cross 9 o'clock guest this morning. I'm a little nervous. I did refresh my blush, but I feel like I'm a bit red in the cheeks because the mayor is in the house.
He's a good-looking man.
He's not hard on the eyes.
No.
And very clever. Thank you for joining us today, Don Iveson.
My pleasure, and I hope my legacy will be judged on the things that I do rather than this continual objectification.
Oh no,
of
did
my
you just
appearance.
get in the world? It won't be. I mean, you know.
We were actually asking that the other day. We have this thing called the Cruise app, so we get a lot of activity on that. All the texts, all the tweets, and all the Facebook posts and everything go to one sort of central location for the radio station. And there was a lot of discussion over the last couple of days about politics. And one of the questions that came up is, I hope people don't vote for somebody based on their hair. Right? Because I made a slanderous comment about Stephen Harper's bad lid. And
Somebody once described it to me as Lego man hair.
Yeah.
Lego man hair, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I start by saying that I consider myself a pretty good judge of character. And I get the sense that Don, you're doing what you do politically for all the right reasons. I think you're the type of personality where you're putting the needs of the city ahead of your own needs, and that's kind of why you wanted to get into politics, affect change, and make a difference. But based on what we know about politics and how difficult it is to get things done, is it a frustrating job for you?
Certainly, but people ask me about this, and my basic answer is it's like any job. Any job has good days and bad days. The difference is in our line of work, our good days are really, really good, and our bad days are really, really bad. But someone needs to be doing this work, and if you're passionate about community, and if you're passionate about making things better, and really for Sarah and I, my wife, our motivation in doing this work, because you have to have your spouse as your number one supporter, and so in making these decisions together about, in each election we evaluate this, can we have an impact, and really the reason we're doing this is to make life better for our kids, so that unlike generations before that couldn't flee Edmonton fast enough, that we can try to build the kind of city that our kids are going to want to stay in. So that's our motivation, and we make sacrifices as a family in terms of free time, and I'm not home every night and some of those other things, but it is in a way for our kids and for every other kid growing up here or who might move here in terms of the work that we try to do. So if you take that kind of intergenerational point of view, rather than thinking about the next goal being winning the next election, but trying to do the right thing for the people who ultimately need you to do it over the long haul, then you'll do the right thing. And if you lose an election in the process, at least you were doing the right thing. So I'd much rather do the right thing and lose than try to win the next election by doing the wrong thing that's short-term thinking, and wind up having to live with the consequences as the mayor for another few years trying to pick up the pieces after yourself. So and I think that's a lot easier to do at the municipal level, just because there's one less layer of partisan complexity to it, and because we're closer to the people, because we're dealing with local issues, I think there's just a lot more opportunity to focus. And we happen to have a really good group of city councilors and some great staff who are all committed to the same kinds of things, and that makes it a lot easier to do this work. So it's not all that bad, actually. It can be very rewarding as long as you're patient.
You were born in St. Albert. You're a young guy. You're younger than us.
36.
Not by much.
I was surprised. I thought you were closing in. I mean, not based on anything other than just how you present yourself.
We thought you looked way over 40. No.
I thought you were closing in on 40. To be honest with you, so
Well,
you're a young
mayor.
mayor.
Like I am. I'm deteriorating rapidly. I talked about some of the sacrifices. I mean, it is nice to be invited out for dinner at a nice hotel or at the conference center or at a restaurant every night, but you got to be a little careful about not eating the roll.
You'd be exhausted.
And you don't finish the potatoes, and it is tough. It's tough to get exercise, and so I feel like I'm deteriorating rapidly. And I once took a personality test about 10 years ago that aged me at like 50.
Well,
so I am an old soul.
I was going to ask that. Like, do you think your kindergarten teacher would say that you entered kindergarten and you already were like 21? Because
I don't know about that.
You're young, and I know you're the youngest mayor in Canada, right?
Of
So
a major Canadian city.
Yeah.
There's a new batch of younger folks.
you're not younger than that NDP dude that just got voted in. He's only 18 or something. But do you feel like you had a childhood because you were reading? Didn't you read War and Peace by the time you're grade 7 or something?
No,
like you're just
no,
a
I don't know
total
where
achiever
that,
guy,
I
right?
don't know about that, but part
Lots
of
of
it
things
is that,
online about me that aren't true as well.
part of it is that I was I'm an only child,
Yeah.
and so I grew up around my parents' friends. So I thought it was normal to talk to adults when I was, maybe in junior high or something, and have interesting grown-up conversations. I didn't want to say adult conversations; those are different kinds of conversations. But grown-up conversations with people.
Those came
and
later, yeah.
and so I'm used to being around groups of people who are not necessarily all the same age as me, not necessarily from the same background. My dad is retired now, really, but was a sculptor, and so I grew up in the arts community in Edmonton here. My
Your
mom
mom
was
was
a
an
teacher.
educator, yeah.
Yeah, and so I grew up around a bunch of really interesting people that she worked with and so I just had really interesting conversations with people, and I guess I grew up with that, and I wasn't intimidated by people who were a different age than me, and so I think that's allowed me to, to interact and be elected as a councillor at 28 and keep up with the old boys club, as it were.
Is it difficult for you to reconcile people not necessarily agreeing with you on some issues? For instance, and I know Nick does not want to waste much time on this, but I wanted
I'm
to
gonna
talk
set
about
my timer right now.
Okay, well, you got to set the timer on him too.
No, I know, I will, I
Okay.
will.
Bike lanes. I don't necessarily agree with you on bike lanes. I get the idea and I get what you're trying to accomplish, but my frustration revolves around the fact that I think that money could be better used to actually fix the roads properly here in Edmonton, because they're not good.
I think he's short-sighted, but anyway.
So I don't agree with you, and I've actually had a previous conversation with you where I thought you handled dealing with, a topic that not everybody agrees with quite well. Has that been tough for you? Are you the kind of personality that wants everybody to just go, okay, this is important to me, I want everybody to agree with me that this is important?
Well, it's natural to want to persuade people to your point of view, but it's democracy, and we don't always win. And but we take a vote, and ideally, before we take a vote, we talk it through, and we come to at least a clear understanding of what those trade-offs are. And your argument, for example, that it's money that could be used to fix the roads, implies that there isn't other money, or that we're not fixing the roads. And so part of the context for this is that council has invested and will continue to invest. And I think, this year we're spending $400 and some million on road work. And because we agree with you, that the roads need to be fixed. But it's a false trade-off to say that we should do one or the other. Ideally, we should be fixing the roads, which we all know needs to be done, and everyone needs that. Especially if you're a cyclist, hitting potholes is pretty calamitous on two wheels. But for everybody, every other user of the road, the city's infrastructure was allowed to fall apart during a time when it would have been very cheap to continue doing the work on it. And so now it's a very expensive time to be catching up on it. But we've committed to do that. It's one of the things that has driven tax increases that are larger than inflation. And so I think council agrees with half of what you're saying, which is that we have to fix the roads. And then in terms of bike lanes, if you look at it on a dollar for dollar or dollar for citizen basis, a given project like the downtown bike lane, yes, it's $8 million. It is a significant amount of money. But if you compare it to the $400 million that we're spending on just fixing roads this year in the city of Edmonton, and look at it on a proportionate basis, you only need then 2% of people to be riding their bikes to justify that proportionate expenditure. And by the time we open that really good piece of bike infrastructure from sort of Glenora through to the east side of downtown, you're going to see 5, 6, 8% of trips or more in those neighborhoods being taken on bicycles year round, because it's good and inviting infrastructure. And I think our mistake was that we didn't, and council's recently made some decisions to take some lanes out that didn't work that well, where the trade-off was we tried to do it really cheap, and we ended up not really serving anyone, including cyclists, all that effectively.
Locke just doesn't like doesn't like biking because it makes his bum sore and he can't find a proper seat. So he's just against biking in general.
But people do it
Yes.
today. More people would
Nick
if the
loves the bike.
infrastructure was better.
I love the bike
And so
lanes.
we need to safely
Love them.
accommodate the people who are going,
And it's
who are using
progressive
the system
thinking, right?
today. And then more importantly, there are people who are making decisions about which city they're going to locate in based on whether they have that option or not. And to exclude an often talented, like the average bike commuter in the city of Edmonton is usually a professional with 1 or 2 degrees. And if we're saying to those people, you know what, Edmonton's not a cycling friendly city, precisely at a time when we need engineers, accountants, creators, we're saying, no, we're not going to be that city. Calgary or Winnipeg, frankly, which has some great bike infrastructure, those are your cities. Go there. That's short-sighted from
It's a
a human
long-term
capital
view,
point of view
yeah.
for Edmonton.
It'll be good for the environment as well, because it hopefully will keep less cars on the road, right?
Well, there's those benefits, and then there's huge.
I see that.
There's huge public health benefits for those people who are doing that active living. They're going to demonstrably have better cardiovascular health, lower instances of diabetes, and so on.
Nick is going to bike to work in the mornings at
All
3
that
o'clock in the
stuff,
morning
Lot.
now, right?
Now, you mentioned drawing more people in to the city. When you're out and you're traveling the world and traveling across the country, what, if we get to brass tacks, what are people saying about Edmonton that you would like to change? Like if we had a makeover show on Edmonton, what's, like we're the before right now, what's the after?
Well, let's leave hockey aside because I think
And
that's
the weather.
turning around. Well, no, weather's the other thing, and this whole northern thing. I mean, that's our niche, that's our shtick.
Yeah.
And then we're not that different than any other Canadian city, except really, a couple cities on the west coast. We all have winter.
We all do, and ours is not
a
as
touch
bad.
longer,
Yeah.
but I would say it's actually very pleasant. But there's this Siberian sense about being sent to Edmonton. But the interesting thing is two observations. One is that we have a very hard time recruiting people here because of the reputation, but we have one of the best retention rates once people get here. And those people, so if you're born and raised here, it's very easy to grumble
It's a
and
great
take
city.
this place for granted. But if you come here from somewhere else, you really realize, or if you're from here, you leave for a couple of years, as I did, come back, and then really critically evaluate whether you're going to stay, then you become quite passionate about the great quality of life, the great schools,
The great
the
people.
economic opportunity, the outdoor recreation opportunities, and if you figure out how to love cross-country skiing or snowshoeing or having a snowball fight, and figure out how to embrace winter, which every Canadian has to do to survive here,
Yeah.
then you love this place. And so the other observation is that our reputation really is changing right now. We're being noticed for the economic resilience that we have. So as the rest of Alberta is struggling, Edmonton is still doing reasonably well. We're being noticed for the transformation of our downtown that's occurring. We're being noticed for the leadership that our council is providing on a number of environmental issues, from our traditional leadership around waste management to the work that we're doing now around energy and climate transition.
We're
for
really
example.
known how we dispose of our waste.
We
We're
are
world leaders.
one of the best in the
Yep,
world at that.
Yep,
I didn't even know that.
yes.
Yeah, we'll take you out to the waste management center
Yeah,
one day.
it's massive.
It's a day trip. Okay, now we don't often get scoops on the other radio stations, but we might have one here. You have something happening at 10:30 this morning. Can you give us a scoop?
Sneak peek?
Yeah, this is actually another great example of both the city's environmental leadership in general terms, and specifically our desire to make sure that we can meet those lifestyle expectations of certain segments of the population that are very mobile and can choose really whatever city they want to live in. And we have a gap right now when it comes to sort of medium density housing that's more walkable, sort of something between a suburban neighborhood and downtown high rises. And I think about it as the brownstone neighborhood, kind of that Brooklyn feel.
Yeah.
And that neighborhood, which we're looking to build, not with necessarily kind of the historical, literal brownstone, but that look and feel of the street, is Blatchford, which is the old airport site. And so we're actually breaking ground today at 10:30 on the installation of the pipes and the utilities underground, which is really the first
Step.
move forward. So we've demolished buildings, we've done a lot of planning, we've been getting it ready, but we're putting stuff underground that is going to service the lots that we're hoping are going to be on the market within the next year or two, so that people can start living in, like I said, our Brooklyn. And it will be, our goal is for it to be a net zero community from a a greenhouse gas point of view, a very beautiful community, a really great high quality of life community connected by LRT, which by then should be open one way or the other. And so it's very, very exciting because it's a transformational development
It's awesome.
in our city that's going to shift our reputation the same way this downtown work has. And it's also going to create those options for Edmontonians and future Edmontonians who will go, you know, that's the kind of place that I want to live. And that in turn
And it's
can shift
commutable.
demand and literacy in the market to say, you know what, this brownstone living, this is for me. And by the way, it's more affordable and less upkeep and
Less commute time.
and proximity to work and to leisure as well in the downtown core.
So you
by
said a year,
LRT.
2 years? You're looking at as far as development and possible. You know,
Well, this
ready
is
to
the
go.
first phase, to be clear, of what could take 30 years to build out. I mean, it's a neighborhood
Eventually.
of 500 acres, which is pretty significant if you look at it on a map. And so it's going to take some time to build out. But this is phase one, and we hope to see people living on it within the next couple of years.
Look at that. Take that,
Well,
Chet.
thank you
We got
for
a
that
scoop. Woo!
Who knew?
John is going to start giving us the evil eye, so we do need to wrap up here, okay?
We want to thank you so much for taking the time to come in. We could have you here all morning
This was fun.
talking about your skills, your 40th birthday party, what that's going to look like. That'll be a big party here in the city. We appreciate your time greatly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for coming down.
Crosbie and Cross on 95.7 Cruise FM.